we have Mrs. Anna Braune from the German Sustainable Building Council, Deutsche Gesellschaft für nachhaltiges Bauen. So we are very interested to see how a business federation or a business association, a big network, is also committing to biodiversity. So, Mrs. Braune, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to speak today because we have something I would say informally sort of developed, and now it's time to talk about it. First of all, who is the German Sustainable Building Council? We are an organization that was founded back in 2007. My role at DGNB is that I'm head of research and development, but I was one of the initiators and founders of this nonprofit organization. We have more than 1,300 member organizations. They are all coming from building product manufacturers, but I'll show you in a second who they are. But our role is that we have this network. We can proudly say that we're Europe's biggest network for sustainable building. We share knowledge. We understand ourselves with the experts to be really a central knowledge platform. And we are training people. We have already trained more than 5,000 experts in sustainable building practices in more than 40 countries. And we do a lot in our own academy. And then we have a certification scheme, the DGNB certification scheme, which we give out to sustainable or more sustainable buildings, but also districts, renovations, existing new buildings, everything. We do have included biodiversity aspects into the certification scheme, and but I'm really happy that more than 7,000 awards have been handed over based on our certification scheme, and it is a very ambitious scheme, and our claim is that we are the global benchmark for sustainable buildings. Our members, which is a very important part. So we are an NGO working for sustainability. We do have members. So we are not an association representing the members, but we are an organization pushing forward our members towards more sustainable building practices. We do have many architects and planners, manufacturers, product manufacturers as well, but also project managers, developers, banks, cities, universities, investors, so the real estate and the building sector. We understood that biodiversity loss is a global real big threat for us, for all of us, for our members, but for all of us. And we also know that the built environment and building is impacting it very harmful. It is not only an issue that is happening outside Europe, but also in our countries here in Europe. And it is, as it was said, very much related also to the climate crisis. We also understood that the built environment is really important. This is a study that has been released last year, which looks at the different tiers or at the value chain of building and construction and at different environmental impacts. And as you can see in the lowest line, which is the biodiversity footprint, which was measured based on a specific methodology, but it shows that biodiversity and the built environment is there's two aspects to consider. It's the raw materials and it's the sites themselves. So, which is a good thing to start. So, which means if you change the way you're building what you're doing on your site, and if you think about where the materials come from, the raw materials, then you already have the biggest impact. We know, so what do we do and what are we planning to do to achieve more, a better situation for the upcoming biodiversity crisis, as to say it like this. So on our certification scheme side, which is really a big lever, because people read it, people apply it in their building practices, companies apply it for their company-wide the way they are building. In 2018, we have introduced a new criteria, which is biodiversity on site. So we set incentives, strong incentives, to change, to implement measures, practical measures based on scientific knowledge as well, what you can change on your site where you put your buildings on or your districts. Secondly, we have a criteria that is focusing on the sourcing of the materials. And this was also fostered to include more certifications, for example, for building products that show that the way the materials were extracted, brought to us, was done in a manner that is ethically and environmental friendly, with a strong focus on biodiversity. We have, of course, these criteria are not the only ones. Since it's a sustainable building certificate, there's many more criteria we look at. For example, climate, carbon footprint of the building, but also water and health related aspects for the occupants, value of the buildings, site-specific aspects. So it's a large, I would say, instrument that can be used to improve sustainability. On our academy side, but we're planning to put more emphasis also onto biodiversity aspects in our scheme. On the academy side, we have already, or we are training people to apply biodiversity aspects in the built environment, but we will expand that. We do have, we push the market to listen to what we found that is important. We know that people sometimes have to use or come to our trainings, and then actually they are forced to listen and learn about biodiversity. And then, of course, with from the communication point of view, we have already done some, I would say, soft communication, why it's important on our blog. But this is something that we're definitely planning to expand. And especially one thing that I'm sort of very proud about is that we are now developing, it's in the final draft, an own biodiversity commitment. So how is our organization fostering biodiversity even more? And secondly, that we say that we also want to foster others to do this, but I'll show you in a minute. But to understand more on our thinking, we do have a DNA on sort of the way we build up our scheme, the way we where we say that is important to communicate is that we always look at the aspects of the built environment from a life cycle perspective. So always ask for where is it coming from, what is happening, and what will happen in future. We value environment, social, and economic aspects sort of together, and we want to have an emphasis on the performance and not so much on measures. So that is actually the ideal that we say if we would have a biodiversity indicator, then people could measure the impact of what they're doing. At this point of time, we're not yet there, so it is a little bit more measures based. But on our way, as I said, we have the draft of our own commitment. So what we are doing as an organization, our CEO will present it to the next UB meeting in more detail. But the important thing is that we want to derive from that. We would like to, or we are planning to prepare stakeholder-specific commitments for our members, for everybody who is interested. So we are sort of translating what from our experience is important to change from a biodiversity perspective for different stakeholder groups in the built environment. So why and how a biodiversity commitment? From a German perspective, we know that in Germany we do have an issue with our own sites. So we need to implement sort of on the building or on the plots where things are happening, where we build our buildings, our cities. We need to change, but also from a resource perspective. Although Germany is quite resource scarce, this means that we really have to look at where the building materials come from and if biodiversity aspects have been considered. So we are asking for labels for which show a responsible sourcing practice for different materials, building materials that are used. So we are aware of the problem, and this means that we really want to work on these two aspects, focal aspects, raw materials, and the sites themselves. So if you want to know more about it, I hope, since I couldn't show you in detail what is in our commitment, but I'm happy to share this with you once it's ready. But I think the main effect is that we can spread it out to members, to as an organization, to SMEs, helping them to not develop or reinvent the wheel, but that it's seen like a template. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Braune. That is also very tangible examples that also a big organization can really contribute and can support even SMEs to play their part and support their involvement. There's one question for you in the chat. Does the wind energy sector take part at DGNB?
It's a good question. We do have energy companies, but I'm not sure if wind energy so much. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe we can elaborate later. Maybe we can write it down. Yes, I see somebody's writing, is typing, or yes, there's another question. Last graphic, was it for all raw material or only material for buildings? The one you were showing.
It's all raw material. But since we know that a lot of raw materials go into the built environment, it's like a Stellvertreter picture, so representative picture.
Representative for, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no more specific questions to the keynote speech, I would go on. Thank you again, Mrs. Braune.